and communal leadership with the bounds of the Halakha. Recognize Eretz Israel as the homeland and the state of Israel. Create more welcoming communities of people with disabilities, Jews of color, Jews of choice, and people at the LGBTQ community. Again, not words that you would expect to hear. Just very, very short. I'm already done. I think just one thing that you said that resonated a lot with me is that you say, if I welcome with open arms those who do not observe Shabbat, kashrut and family purity laws, I must welcome even more so homosexual Jews as they are born with their orientation. So we commend you for that, and you have a listening, and the stage is yours.
Take my hug.
It's a great zchut to be here with you. And I just did want to meet everybody online. If that possibly up here?
Oh, I think it will be hard.
That'll be hard. So please excuse that. I'm not meeting you personally, and just a welcome to all of you. And I know people are online just for the hours. Maybe after the hour we'll go around. Connect with you directly. I love Nigun, so it's hard for me to talk without first singing. And I was studying with my dear friend Eli Kranzler. Dr. Eli Kranzler, who's a psychiatrist, but who leads our tefillah. He's a Baal tefillah, just beautiful neshama, beautiful voice. And we studied together the Sfat Emet, who was the first Hasidic Rebbe of the Gera Hasidim, and a very open, overflowing neshama. And months ago, we were reading what he said about Vayomer Hashem. God said, Lech Lecha, the portion of Lech Lecha, go. And he writes, Adam tzarich lihiyot mehalech. Now this is a Rebbe. You would think he'd write Adam tzarich lishmor Shabbat, Adam tzarich lishmor kashrut. He says, no, Adam tzarich liyot mehalech. A person, Adam I see is gender neutral. Adam has to keep walking. Shiru Lashem Shir Chadash. Every day there should be a new song. Yesterday was very sweet. We can build on it. But every day, Baboker, there has to be a new song. And then he writes, Shetzarich Adam, a person has to go mimadrega limadrega, not just to walk, but to go higher and higher. So I wrote this little nigun. Vayomer Hashem, Lech Lecha, Lech Lecha. And then of course, Lechi Lach, Vayomer Hashem, Lech Lecha, Lech Lecha, Lechi Lach. Adam tzarich liyot mehalech, Adam tzarich. See, that's like a fetch. Adam tzarich liyot mehalech. Not so simple. Adam tzarich liyot mehalech, Adam tzarich liyot mehalech. Shetzarich ha'adam tamid lelech b'madrega, b'madrega. Shetzarich ha'adam tawawam lelech b'madrega. Now God has blessed me with the kind of voice that people have pity on me and they join in. Vayomer Hashem, Lech Lecha, Lech Lecha, Lechi Lach. Vayomer Hashem, Lech Lecha, Lech Lecha, Lechi Lach. Adam tzarich liyot mehalech, Adam tzarich liyot mehalech. Shetzarich Adam tamid lelech b'madrega, b'madrega. Shetzarich Adam tamid lelech b'madrega. One last time. Vayomer Hashem, Lech Lecha, Lech Lecha, Lechi Lach. Vayomer Hashem, לך לך, לך לך, לכי לך, אדם צריך להיות נחת, אדם צריך להיות נחת, שצריך האדם תוהו ומלך במדרגה, במדרגה, שצריך תוהו ומלך במדרגה, במדרגה. Song and so much a part of what we do. Thank you so much, Akir. So I'll just say a few words because I really want to hear from you and those who are online at Yeshivat Marat. There are many students who are studying online, so I become very sensitive to making sure wherever you are in Houston and Las Vegas and San Diego, everybody should feel as much a part of our discussion as possible. It's a great honor for me to spend a little time with you, Nitai. Thank you for your sweet words and kind words, and to be with Yakir, who studied at, amongst other places, at the Hartman's Institute, and is a close friend of my son, Dov. And Dov started Yeshivat Chovevei Torah with me, and then went on his journey, and is now a scholar, and I objectively say he's a brilliant scholar. Would you agree, Akir?
Oh, definitely, definitely.
And he received his PhD from Michael Fishbane, who is one of the greats. And Dov is very fortunate because he's also a learner. He spent a lot of time. So you can be a scholar without being a Talmid Chacham, and vice versa. He really is. He really is in both categories. And so you met Dov at Hartman's. Dovi Hartman was a very, very dear friend of mine. And when we started Chovevei, and there was so much criticism, Dovi used to say, "Don't let him get you down." Just this was Dovi. How many of you have heard of David Hartman? Well, we're a very, very important figure in our community. Extremely. Alav Shalom passed away for me much too early. So it's a joy, Akir, and Alei Batzlach in your holy work. I'll just say a few words, and it's hard to consolidate all that we could discuss, but perhaps we can frame it with what Rav Kook used to talk about. He always spoke about Am Yisrael, he spoke about Torat Yisrael, and then he spoke about Eretz Yisrael. So I'd like to say, just as a start, a few words about each from a particular perspective that may be different than what you're accustomed to. I am an Orthodox rabbi, but for me, Orthodoxy doesn't mean that one has to live in a world of rigidity. It's an Orthodoxy that is open and inclusive and non-judgmental and loving, very loving. We not only need a living Judaism, we need a loving Judaism, and we sure as heck need a loving Orthodoxy. In terms of Am Yisrael, my perspective of Am Yisrael is I look at Am Yisrael as family, and any piece of the Am as family. So I've been a rabbi here for almost 50 years. And while some people look at this place as being a synagogue or a congregation, I don't see it that way. I see this place as a family. That's why we call this place the Bayit, because families live in a home. This is a home. Just a word of Torah. When you look at all of Sefer Bereshit, the book of Genesis, one wonders, why do you need Bereshit? The Torah is the story about the Jewish nation, begin with Sefer Shemot, which really talks about the coming into being of Am Yisrael. And if we need a little history of where we come from, we could take care of that in a couple of sentences. What do you need 50 chapters? My own sense is, B'kitzur, that Bereshit is the story of broken families which come together. At the end of Bereshit, the family comes together. And it's only when the family comes together that Bereshit ends. And Shemot, the story of the nation, begins. And Breshit casts its light on Shemot, teaching that the best model of nation is family. Whenever I see an issue related to Am Yisrael, I plug in the word family. And I take family very, very seriously. When I say family, I mean people, whatever their religious orientation, whatever one's affiliation, whatever one's background, whatever one's level of observance, we're all mishpacha. We're all mishpacha. I don't view my role as a rabbi to preach and to give musar. I don't look at it that way. We're in family. I do look at my role as a rabbi to expose people to text, but I am absolutely and unalterably opposed to any form of kviyat hadat. Kviyat hadat and spiritual striving, they just don't work together. And that's the concept of family. And families that work, not all families work, there is that acceptance. My Dovi, who teaches me something every day, a couple of years ago, now thank God he's married, and his wife Shandy writes for the Wall Street Journal. Yesterday she had a lead article just beneath the crease of page 1 on the railway from Chicago to St. Louis, and she still goes by the name Shandy Race, so when you see her name. So Dove said something to me, and I said, as a father, I said something to him. He said to me something I never ever forgot. He said, Abba, I wasn't looking for your advice. I was looking for your validation. It's really a beautiful, beautiful concept. Not looking for your advice, looking for your validation. Of course, in this setting, I'm a rabbi, so I do try to influence, but never, ever through coercion. And frankly, this is something I think that Medinat Israel can learn a great deal from American Jewry, the whole concept of pluralism. That's what family means. Family means regardless of one's sexual orientation. Very important to me. You know, in the Torah, God says many times, Vayar Elokim ki tov. There's only one time when God says lo tov. When God says lo tov, heyot adam levado. And we've done groundbreaking work. We are an Orthodox synagogue. I'm very aware of what's going on in the Psukim. But everybody is welcome, regardless of sexual orientation, regardless of disability and who doesn't have a disability. We all have disabilities, everybody in their own way. And we try very, very hard to create the sense of closeness. As an Orthodox rabbi, I am an unapologetic pluralist. I have learned so much from my conservative and reform colleagues. Tremendous, tremendous amount. Because there was a long time when I was only Emen Ani Limidi. But they taught me, Uchshani Latzmi Ma'ani. And I've learned that a strong sense of national identity should not contradict universal consciousness, but should be a prerequisite to it. Let me move from family to Torah. And I've touched upon certain aspects of Torah. When I say Torah Israel, I mean it in the broadest sense. Everybody can look at Torah, can interpret Torah differently, but we all have a great deal to learn from each other. For me, when I see in Israel that there are tefillot on Friday night on the beaches of Tel Aviv, if I were young again, I want to go to the beaches of Tel Aviv. I want to go to that train station in Yerushalayim. When I hear that and I see that and I hear about these Batei Midrash, it lifts us. And wherever you're at, the truth is I don't like the term secular. I don't like the term secular because for me, religious is a very, very broad term. I know a lot of people who are observant Jews, but they're not religious. And I know religious Jews who are not observant. I don't mean this in a cutesy way. So Torah Israel means that if there's going to be a Bet Midrash, and it's a Bet Midrash which is an open kind of Bet Midrash, even that doesn't necessarily involve the normative way one looks at a Bet Midrash. It's something to be extolled and uplifted. Some of my colleagues struggle with that and say a Bet Midrash is only meant for the observant. It's meant for everybody. And I want to encourage you that that's so critical. Because in the end, what does it mean to be Jewish? What is it to be Jewish? That's what it comes down to. Now, it's not just that, and I think we can spend hours. Is there a unique way that Judaism looks at social justice? But for me, it's Shabbat too. What did Avnon say? More than the Jew kept Shabbat, Shabbat has kept the Jew. And Shabbat, it's a beautiful ethical concept. The Pasuk says in Mishpatim, rest for 6 days. Leman yanuach shorcha v'chamcha v'gercha. There are times when Shabbat is mentioned when the name of God is not even mentioned. Rest on Shabbat, it's the great democratizer. It's the great equalizer. Shabbat is a beautiful, beautiful concept. It represents the mission of what Judaism is all about. It speaks to the question, why be Jewish? Why are we Jewish? And one can only get that if one is involved in Torah, Torah Israel. And the last piece is Eretz Israel. So I'll say something controversial. I love this community, but for me, the national destiny of Am Yisrael is not unfolding in America. I'm living in America, you're living in America. But for me, the national destiny in Israel, where we potentially have the capacity to create an unusual state, we have a long way to go, where we are sovereign, where we have autonomy. In the end, America is a Christian country. No matter which way you cut it, we are a minority of a minority. They're beautiful communities, but the best place where we have the potential to meet our challenge of our national destiny is in Medinat Israel. And so being connected to Medinat Israel for me is very central. Whatever one's politics, from the right to the left, I say this in a very, very consensus type way. We have a daughter who lives in Efrat, Ilana, married to Michael, and she has 9 children. We keep reminding her that it's our 9 grandchildren, my most prized possession. I carry around are these medals, which all of the Chevra, the first 4 are now have been or are in the army. I'm very proud of them. This will also surprise you. This universalist believes that the holiest Jew is one who's in Tzva Haganah Israel, and that's why most recently I've become the Rav of what's called Garin Sabar, and we travel the country trying to inspire young men and women to consider going into the army and becoming Chayalim, Chayal Boded, Chayalit Bodedot. Our eldest grandson was in Sayeret Egol's Lo Pashut. Lo Pashut. Very, very tough. When he joined the army, my daughter Ilana fell on me and she said, she has 9 kids. She said, Abba, I'm going to be the mother of a soldier for the next 22 years. I said, Ilana, I pray it'll be unnecessary. It's a dream, but I pray it'll be unnecessary. The second one, Eitan, did Chil Avir, and not in a fighting Chil Avir. I forget what they call it. He called it a jobnik, and I want to write a piece that there is no such thing as jobnik here in Tzava. Everything is important. And this past summer, he worked with Danny Danone at the United Nations mission. He's going to one day be an ambassador. I have no doubts about it. Third one, Rami, would you believe he was a great ball player, great basketball player? Here I am talking about this, telling you about my great ball player grandson. And he was offered a Maccabi contract to play for Ramat Gan, which would have given him a Patur. Omri Caspi, he's no Omri Caspi, but Omri Caspi was never in Tzava to my knowledge. You get a Patur. And he turned it down. I said, Rami, why'd you turn it down? How long did it take you to turn down? He said, they call me Sabi Avi, not a second. I want to serve. Then he busted his knees. He didn't tell his mefaked. I said, you got to tell your mefaked. you can't keep up. Anyways, he tried to do it and he couldn't keep up. Now he's doing what's called Khatamat Zion. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's the security in Gush Etzion. And now I'm proud to say, in the Weiss family, the first young woman is in Tzava, not doing the fancy work that you did. She is a Mashakit Tash, which is very, very, very important. I'm sorry, very important. Ayelet is the best of the best. We're very proud. And look, when you are in America, there are two kinds of synagogues you can join. There's a synagogue that's really in the Gola, in the Tfutzot. And then there's a synagogue that's here, but wherever you're walking towards Medinat Israel, and you feel that connection. I'll just say one final word, having said something about Am Yisrael and Torat Israel and Eretz Israel. Something fascinating I'm finding in Efrat, especially. Efrat is pretty much an Orthodox community, but what I'm finding is that the Chevra are so, the rhythm of Medinat Israel is Jewish. The calendar is Jewish. Everything about it is Jewish. You can't get away from it in the morning. You could be secular, which is, again, a term I don't like. For me, if you're living in Israel, that already is the highest of levels. But when you wake up in the morning at 6 o'clock, I mean, where in America do you wake up? Modeh ani lefanecha on Kol Yisrael or whatever it is. I mean, you can't get away from it. People talking the rebirth of the language of Hebrew. This is a miracle. We're living, and you're part of the miracle. Most of you were there, raised there. I hope you realize I was not part of that. You were part of that miracle. But I find that the Chevra are so tied to the land that they become disconnected to a ritual because they don't need the ritual to connect anymore. And what I am finding is that in America, there are many Israelis who live in this community, hundreds of families, that they're searching for Jewish identification. And many of them pray here. This is sort of the Bet Knesset for Yisraelim. And we try very, very hard to have an intersection between those who lived in Israel, who live here now, and Americans born in America. Because the Israelis, you have so much to teach us. And I dare say that I think it goes in the opposite direction as well. I've spoken way too long. I want to stop and I want to hear from you. And above all, I want to learn from you.
You want to see it? Like, I will take you out. Yeah, you're on mute.
Got it. So I guess if anybody wants to speak, just raise your hand that I can see. Right, Anat? You want, yeah, Anat. Please.
Yeah.
Please go ahead, Anat.
Anat Katzir.
Anat Katzir. From where are you from?
I'm from New Jersey.
Anat, we cannot hear you. Can you take yourself out?
Try this.
I see
You're unmuted. Do you have a speaker?
No, we cannot hear you. 1 second. Anat?
כן.
שומעים אותך.
Okay. So good evening, thank you. And
Anat, where are you talking from?
I'm from New Jersey.
Where?
In New Jersey. I'm pretty close, just across the bridge. And I have a question to lead up to where you arrived in this amazing place where you are a leader of pluralist Judaism and a pluralistic Orthodox Judaism. And it seems almost heroic, I think, to me, knowing that it's not necessarily the obvious direction and messaging that the Orthodox movement shares with many of us. I'm kind of wondering about your origin story. So what brought you to these ideas? Did you have them growing up? Was it challenging to grow up with some of these thoughts in your community, and sort of what brought you to the way that you view the world now?
Well, I was raised in a religious Zionist home. My father, Alav Shalom, was a leader in Shomer Hadati, which is the precursor of Bnei Akiva. as was my mother. My father, however, came to America from Oshvenchim. He actually was raised as a Bava of a Chassid, and he grew up in the town in Poland that became Auschwitz. I sometimes refer to my father as the Bava of a Zionist, the Hasidic Zionist, and they imbued that philosophy in me. But I was sent for financial reasons to the least expensive yeshiva, so I wound up in a Haredi school. So kind of a mixed message I was getting. But I would say my greatest influence in my particular case is my family. I have 4 siblings. My sister Tova is one of the great, she's spoken of as one of the great writers in America. Her name is Tova Reich, and she's a brilliant fiction writer. And she left Orthodoxy. She left it because, especially on the feminist issue, she just couldn't handle what she felt was a suffocating type of teaching. And then I have Brother Mordechai, who's the most normal of all of us. He ran a school in Atlantic City in Margate, New Jersey for many, many years. And now is living in Efrat. He made Aliyah. He has 9 children. And he's the one who kind of traveled the straightest road. And then I have a younger sister, Sari, who is still living in the 60s. Mamish, still in the 60s. The holiest neshama in the world. She is the holy of the holies. And she's also dreadlocks. She's now in her 60s. And she's touched my life in a very, very, very deep way. She's part of what's called the Rainbow Coalition. I don't know if you're familiar, in that very universalistic world. And then I have a younger brother, a Davi, who was ordained Orthodox and today is traditional egalitarian. And he's involved in the Naraiva community in Toronto. So what's remarkable, however, is we love each other and we respect each other. And I think about this often. I think that's been a great, great influence on. Not everybody is as fortunate to have been raised in a home where, as different as we were, there was such an accent placed. I mean, what do we parents want from our children most after health and this and that? We want our kids to love each other, and as different as we are, we have stayed very connected and love each other very deeply. And I take very seriously what I said about the family of Israel. I take very seriously the family of Israel, very seriously. In my political activism, just as an example, I have been criticized very heavily, let us say, by the president of Argentina, whom I accused of covering up after Amia in 1994. The president of Poland went after me when we were protesting against the Auschwitz convent. I don't mind those criticisms. But when the criticism comes from a fellow Jew, and it has come, the chief rabbinate, as some of you may know, has said it would not recognize, forget about my conversions. They said they wouldn't even recognize if I signed a statement that you're Jewish. You don't need a rabbi for that. As much as they've taken different positions, that hurts me deeply, because they're a member of my family, of my inner family. So I take that stuff. I take the concept of family of Am Yisrael in a serious, very serious way. I hope that helps you.
Thank you very much.
Great.
Anybody else?
Do you have a question?
Can you repeat?
Yeah, Michal Cohen, do you have a question?
I think somebody's asking, I think Michal probably cannot speak. He says, are there any rabbis that follow your lead? So
Well, that's why the yeshiva was created. Now, there are, the answer to that question, the short answer to that question is yes, and I'm happy to say it's not my lead. There are many people who are leading. I'm very much opposed to rabbis serving as a kind of hierarchical head. I don't think that's healthy. I'm very much opposed to centralization of rabbinic authority. When you put so much power into the hands of the few, power corrupts. A great deal of power corrupts greatly. And I very much support the autonomy of rabbis around the country. And this is something that I think is very critical in Israel. And I also very much support the role of the laity in impacting upon the rabbi. When you come to the rabbi for a decision, often the decision that the rabbi is making is not a purely halachic decision, but it's a decision which is based on a certain understanding of the sociology of the community. It's based on public policy. And the laity should have a very, very major role in such discussion. And even when it comes to pure halacha, we're not Catholics. So when a rabbi offers a decision, I think the laity has a right to push back and say, wait a minute. Example, the halacha in Orthodoxy that a man gives a woman a divorce, a husband to a wife. And as a consequence in America, there are women who are agunot, whose husbands refuse to give them gitim. It wasn't the rabbis who said we have to solve that problem. It was the laity who rose and rebelled and said, this, Blue Greenberg, she should be well. She said, this is unacceptable. And today, more and more and more rabbis are not going to do a wedding in America unless a prenuptial is signed, in which bride and groom sign that if there will be a civil divorce, there will be a get. My wife and I, we signed a postnuptial. We're married over 50 years. We signed a postnuptial in front of 500 people. And we drank a l'chaim. Because for me, signing such a document, and it's been worked out halachically, is a sign of deep, deep love. Because it says, I love you so much. I want to protect you. If ever I'm out of control, I want to protect you from something I, God forbid, can do. It's a deep, deep expression of love. So in answer to your question, there have been surveys taken. There are many, many, many tens of thousands of people who are into an orthodoxy which is open and inclusive. The estimate is that it's close to 100,000 people. And it's an orthodoxy in which I could say, I am an Orthodox rabbi, but I am not a rabbi of Orthodox Jews. That is not who I am. I am a rabbi of Orthodox Jews, but I'm a rabbi of all Jews. And if you come into this Bet Knesset, it is a very heterogeneous Bet Knesset. People of all backgrounds, all coming from all kinds of places. Everybody is welcome. So the numbers are growing. And what I'm finding around the country, the Pew surveys say, oh, people are not looking for God, for spirituality. I disagree. I'm not a survey taker, but I do enough traveling, and anecdotally, I think people are searching. Mm-hmm. People are searching for meaning, for purpose. It's not a bad word to say for God. People are searching. They just need the right spiritual leader to light the fire. Mm-hmm. And that's why we started these schools. And I find over and over with the right spiritual leader in a community, unbelievable things can happen. So you have to choose the right community, be in the right place, and then be part of, and don't sit back to be acted upon, but join in partnership in the process.
Thank you. There's a few questions here. One is from Nama. I'm not sure you are from Nama, but thank you for the question. And she's asking if do you see part of your mission in keeping Judaism in existence in the future? And what is the internal dangers, not necessarily like from outside sources, but internally, what's the challenges are? What are the challenges? Okay.
I think the greatest internal challenge is the spiritual challenge. What I generally find is that many Jews in America identify themselves as Jews when they face an anti-Semitic enemy. Then people snap to attention. But that's a Judaism which I call negative Judaism. It's reactive Judaism. And anything that is a negative Judaism will not endure. If I am a Jew and I define my Judaism by what I'm fighting against, that's a problem. It's true in Medinat Yisrael as well. For Judaism to endure, I've got to be able to proactively, positively answer that question. What does Judaism, in a proactive way, what does it mean to me? So I think that's a key challenge, but I think an even greater challenge is Achdut Yisrael, and by unity of Israel, I don't mean uniformity. There's a very big difference. Uniformity means if I disagree with you, I just eradicate your position and everybody agrees with me and Shalom al Yisrael. Unity means we can live together despite our differences. That's the key challenge. Unity means that we're civil in the way we disagree. Unity means I'm not the only talker, and I'm talking too much tonight, but I am an active listener. I'm an active listener. Lately, that's what's been going around, is certainly in counseling, is to always, the counselor should always see the word in capital letters, wait, in front of her or him, W-A-I-T, which stands for, why am I talking? I should be listening and listening to the other position. This is something in rabbinic education that's important, because too many schools spend so much time teaching rabbis how to talk. You know what's much more complicated? Learning how to listen. It's much more complicated. To be an active listener, lo pashut.
Can we get to Houston? I see that there is a question from Houston.
I don't know what's Houston. I know.
I will update. Yeah, please. Let's see. Yeah, we can hear you.
Hi, Rabbi Avi.
Need to.
From Houston.
From Houston, yes.
Okay. Rabbi Avi, I was part of your shul back, I think, 3 years ago on the top floor. I had a question for you. Considering I also know about Riverdale, we talked about it here also in the group. Riverdale is an area that a lot of Jews come for a very small amount of time. So you have a lot of families that come in for a year or two, maybe 3, and then they leave the community. How do you create a sense of family and a sense of unity in that situation, especially in your shul, which I've felt very welcomed at, through that small amount of time, and make an impact, on those families and create sort of a community?
Second? Yeah, now.
You've articulated a great challenge. That is a challenge. We're doing all we can to try to inspire young couples to remain. And it's a little bit better now in that young couples are not running to the suburbs to buy homes for $1 million, but some are staying in apartments, breaking through an apartment, which is much less expensive. It's closer to the city. The demographics are changing, but I have no simple answer. I am proud that there are many people who are here 3, 5, 10 years, and then they move on, and they try to bring the spirit of what the Bayit is about to their own community. I don't know, are you in Barry Gelman's shul?
He's new.
And at the Sephardic synagogue here, but
Right.
We're friends.
Right, so like Barry was a rabbi here. There've been many former rabbis here. And for example, the rabbi in Atlanta now who's gotten into that, who has stood up against the whole Young Israel movement that applauded the Otzma Yehudit thing, and he took great exception to that. So there are rabbis all over the country who represent this more pluralistic, modern, open orthodoxy. But your question is a good question. We have to keep trying to do the best we can to either convince people to stay, and in the 3 years that they're here, do everything we can to make people feel welcome.
Thank you. Can you ask Itai the question about Kedusha? I see that there is a...
Sure.
Yeah, somebody, you said there are no secular Jews, but for the ones that are, let's say, Jews that are not practicing it, just how do you explain to them, like the term Kedusha?
Clear us. Kedusha means living and Vishamru derech Hashem lasot tzedakah u'mishpat. That's what it means. We associate Kedusha, many associate observance with Shabbat, Kashrut, Tarat HaMishpacha. And certainly as an Orthodox rabbi, that's very, very important. It's very important to my conservative colleagues who observe in their own way. Very, very important to Reform colleagues now. There's serious Shabbat. If you go to the Central Synagogue, Angela and others, people keep it in their own way. But when I look at the mitzvot, at the 613 mitzvot, the majority are mitzvot ben adam lechavero. And if one follows in those paths, that is an expression of kedusha. And I certainly am not gonna, certainly when it comes to one's relationship with God, I'm not gonna sit in judgment of anyone. I was once at a rabbinic seminar where a rabbi, my senior, said, Avi, you are so non-judgmental that for you there is no such thing as a tzaddik or a rasha. And I said, I'm sure there is, but I'll let God decide who's a tzaddik and who's a rasha. I'm not going to make. Look, obviously, when it comes to interpersonal relationships, there are people who do wrong things. I'm talking about in terms of relationship to those types of ritual which are connected to God. Although my own philosophy is I don't think that there's a ritual that is absolutist between myself, like Shabbat. I do not believe that Shabbat is only a statement to remind ourselves that God created the world. I think Shabbat is an unbelievable interpersonal statement, that it says something about elevating and ennobling, interfacing relationships between people. There's a power to Shabbat. There's a human power to Shabbat. Like recently I saw somebody said that the internet's driving me crazy. We should unplug once a year. Then somebody wrote and said, once a year, that's not enough. We should do it once a month. We should unplug. And then somebody came up with a genius idea. Why once a month? Let's do it once a week. The world needs the message of Shabbat, however you keep Shabbat. So that for me is a broad sense of what Kedusha is. I'll tell you a very sweet piece of Nachmanides. Ramban, one of the greats, he lived in the 12th century. He says, why does the Torah have to say, be holy, be kadosh? Keep all the mitzvot, by definition, you're holy. You know what he says famously? He says, because you can keep the whole Torah and you could be a naval birshut Torah. You could be repugnant with the permission of the Torah. You could keep kashrut and you could be eating in the most ugly way. You could keep the laws of Tarat Mishpacha and not conducting yourself properly in spousal relationships, and on and on and on. And that's why we need Kedusha. Kedusha is it's another dimension. Yes, please.
Thank you.
What's your first name?
My name is Kobe.
Kobe.
Oh, Yaakov.
Yaakov.
So first thing, thank you for having us.
It's such an honor to be here, and I'm sorry that I'm talking so much. I want to learn from you. You hear my Brooklynese. I want to. It'll never go away.
My question is about the growing gaps between Israel and Israelis and American Jewry.
Right.
And I wanted to ask, how do you think those gaps can be narrowed, and what type of a role maybe the Israelis who live here can play in that game in order to narrow the gaps?
This is why I'm excited by what you're doing. You're very exciting. I think, first of all, there is a very powerful gap. And I'm not a person who's a Yodea Sefer, who's a mumche in the specifics of how. I'm more a Luftmensch. I know there's a problem. There's a very, very big problem. I know for sure that American Jewry has so much to gain from the state of Israel. So much to gain from the state of Israel on every level. Israel is it's a miracle. Israel's a miracle. And in the same breath, Israel has a lot to learn from America, especially when it comes to pluralistic Judaism. This issue of the Rabbanut is a very serious problem. I'm proud to say that I believe that it's being improved because, for example, my dear friend Rabbi Shlomo Riskin is doing conversions outside of the rabbinate. There are weddings, even Orthodox, that are being done outside of the rabbinate. Communities should be choosing their own rabbi. It doesn't make sense that the only way I can get married in Israel is with the Orthodox rabbinate. It hurts orthodoxy. If there'd be choice, people will be more attracted to orthodoxy. So here is, Kobe, where you could play a major role. And it's too often the case that Israelis kind of are pulled into their own communities with big walls around the communities. And if it's here, you can make a great difference. Not by imposing yourself, but being part. If you're doing Batei Midrash, let it not just be with those from, let it be in a broader sense, and joining Batei Knesset. That's the beginning. You know, to take a long journey, you have to begin with a first step. So over and over, I have found individuals, they see a problem, and every individual has the capacity to make a difference in trying to fix it. So I have no quick responses on, what I do know is that that there is a serious schism, but I'm convinced we have so much to learn from each other.
I think it's time. Can end.
Okay, so I want to thank everybody.
1 second. Let's make sure that you are mute.
I just want to invite whoever is out there to come to Riverdale, come to the Bayit, and feel welcome to join us.
So I want to...
1 second. Sorry.
The Israeli spaceship on the way to the moon.
Yep.
So I want to first thank you for taking the time.
Great pleasure.
Absolutely, and I think we're going to stay for a few minutes just to have a conversation here. But I wanted at this opportunity to thank everybody that joined us from whether it's New Jersey or Houston or Las Vegas or San Diego, wherever you guys are. So I think you wanted to remind you that the next session will be with the journalist that Sivan Rav Meir. That would be on March 31st. So thank you and good night.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure meeting you.